Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the Solera XL from Lippert. This is going to be a replacement awning for your RV, and today we have it on a 2021 Keystone Raptor. Now you can see right away this is a very large awning. In fact, it extends 9 foot out, and this one is 20 foot long. So this is going to give you a lot of shade coverage, and that's why it lives up to the name XL. So this one is a great way to have that powered awning come out so you can extend that out and really add shade to any campground and be able to hang out with plenty of real estate for you and your friends. So not only can this replace your old awning, but also being an XL, this is going to give you 20% more shade than your typical Solera. Now, being rather large, if you are concerned about wind causing damage, which can be a real thing on these, we do offer the Solera umbrella, and that's going to allow a center support to really give it a little bit more bracing and give you peace of mind. So if you want, you can check that out on eTrailer and determine the right length for yours. Now, as far as installation goes, obviously it's rather large, so you are going to need a few things, including a couple of ladders that are tall enough to reach up to your extrusion rail, a couple of buddies to help feed that into the rail, and also a couple of hours. Also, some power tools are going to really help here. It's not too much hardware, but overall, setting aside a few hours to get it shade for the rest of the time on your RV, I think is well worth it. Determining the length of roller that you need, you're going to want to measure from the center of the arm to the center of the other arm, and that way it's not just the length of the roll itself. You're going to be using that measurement from arm to arm, so make sure that's going to be an important thing. Otherwise, if you go by the fabric width, you're going to be too wide. So go ahead, go from the center, measure out where you're going to be to the next one, and that's going to give you your measurement. Now, our neighbor today has actually had a tree fall on their previous one, so there's already marks made where they had their arms previously installed. So we're going to be reinstalling a new one here. That way they can get their shade back when they're camping. If this is a new installation, you're going to want to make sure that you have an extrusion rail, and this is where our channel of the bead is going to actually feed in, holding the fabric in place. So if you don't have one already, a lot of campers will have them. You can pick one up here at eTrailer, and that way you can get your bead fed in. Now, something you're going to want to do is on this outside edge, take just a flathead screwdriver, and you're going to want to open up this bead a little bit. It's going to make it a lot easier sliding that bead through and just make it easier while we feed it in. So just bowing it out a little bit like that. Again, it's going to make it easier to feed, but also it's not going to catch as we go, so it is going to prevent it from cutting or damaging as we feed it. Now, since our customer already had theirs on, we have the holes already, so I'm going to be putting a little bit of butyl tape here, and that's going to help to kind of get that arm to not only adhere better before putting the hardware on, but also as we draw that hardware in, it's going to create a nice seal here, and that way where the hardware goes in, we don't have to worry about water getting in there long term. Now, if you are doing a new installation, you're going to want to get yours in place and determine height-wise exactly where you want it, and also make sure that it's going to be level with the other one. So go ahead, make your marks, and you can get ready to drill that in later on as we get the arm up. But again, this butyl tape is going to just help if you already have those pre-existing holes. So since we know exactly where our holes already are, I'm going to go ahead and put the butyl tape here. Now, if again yours is a new installation, you can actually put this on the arms, and that way it'll be ready for when you put those screws through. So now you're going to want to go ahead and get your arm set up, and you're going to see it can really only go one way because this is where our awning is going to attach to. Now, in order to get to where we're going to be mounting this up on the side of the RV, we're going to need to remove this zip tie. Now, it is under pressure from the gas strut, so you're going to want to be careful here. So when you open this up, just make sure that it's not going to pop towards you. So we'll go ahead and get this cut. You can see it's starting to open up a little bit. We'll just let this extend out. Now, because this is the XL, our holes that we previously had aren't all going to line up, and that's because this has a further extension, and part of that is going to be our wiring is going to be in a different location. So what I'm going to do is hold up, our top holes should be the same here, but as I kind of hold this in place, I can see where I'm going to have to drill out some holes to allow us to get that wiring in place. Now, I've gone ahead with a paint marker and made a mark where we're going to need to drill a hole to allow our factory wiring to go through here. Before we do that, on the back side there's going to be a channel that we can pop out. just by your hands there, and that's going to allow us to move our wire out of the way so we don't damage that in the process. So we'll go ahead, get this drilled out. So now, unfortunately, since only the top holes are lining up, we're gonna have to go ahead and put some butyl tape on our other holes that are on the rail. So I'm gonna just put the middle one. It does allow you to have different points here, but the middle one should be just fine as we don't have anything that's gonna be in the way. So we'll go ahead, get some butyl put on these holes as well as the bottom one. Now, if you already have a connector on your RV side, we're gonna go ahead and cut this off because our actual powered lift is just going to be 2 bare wires. No worries, we're going to cut this, peel this back, and we'll be able to attach that later with some heat shrink butt connectors. So we'll go ahead, get our connector taken off. It's also going to make it easier to pass through that hole that we just made. So we're going to go ahead and take our screws, and I'm going to get this top one mounted up. It's going to make it easier for the rest of our hardware to go up in place. And we don't have to completely crank this down because we're going to want a little bit of adjustment down below. So we'll just make it nice and snug so it'll support itself. My top one's holding this in place. This is a good chance to really make sure that we're level here. So I've passed my wire through the hole that we drilled, and I'm going to go ahead, level this up, and then once we're happy with it, I'll go ahead and mount our bottom. Now you're going to want to have someone hold the arm here so it's not extending, but this is going to allow us to have space here for our drill to actually get in place. Now with your extra set of hands, you're going to have them hold that in place, and you may need to extend the arm out. You don't want it to go completely out. It can get a little bit tricky, but we're going to go ahead and get these mounted up. So now that we have this mounted up, to kind of keep this in place, I'm going to go ahead and put a nice big zip tie around here, and that's going to hold it from moving around too much. So now we have our one side mounted up. We're going to go ahead and do the other side as well, and that's going to make it a lot easier to get our roller in place and mount it up rather than having to hold that. It's going to be pretty easy to get in place because we have a little bit of movement here. We'll be able to slide that roller on. So I'm going to go ahead, get our other side in, and then we'll come back from there. So now at this point, you're going to want to have a few extra sets of hands as well as some ladders, and you're going to want to be moving the ladders as we feed this on. So we're going to be taking this bead, just make sure it's in the proper orientation. Now I've gone ahead and removed the one paper ring, and that's just going to kind of hold it together, but this first one I can start feeding it, and as I move along, we can take that off. So since this is pried out, we can go ahead and take our bead and just slowly feed it in to our channel here. As far as your proper orientation, you're going to want this going over the top here, so just make sure you have that set up before you lift it in place. So I'm just going to kind of move this along, and then we have our next set of hands to help us carry this. It's So now here on our shaft, it's going to be keyed and slide in, and there's going to be a hole, and you're going to want to have your square bit, it's a number 2, your hardware ready. That way we can tighten this in place. Now the side without the motor is actually able to free spin, so as long as we get this one aligned, it's going to be easy to get this all lined up. So we'll just get this aligned here, and that hole should only go one way. Now once we're aligned here, we're going to go ahead, take that number 2 square bit bolt, and we're just going to get this in place, and then we'll tighten that down. Just thread that in there, and then with this side in, we can go to our other side and get that hardware in as well. Now on this side, this one's going to free spin as I mentioned earlier, so go ahead, get that aligned with the hole, and then we'll get our hardware in place. Before we put our screws in place into our channel, we're going to want to extend this out, and that way we can kind of iron out any of the roll and make sure that it's nice and taut. So we're going to want to power this out, and so we're going to make our electrical connection. So you can see where I've cut off our old plug. I'm going to go ahead and use some heat shrink butt connectors here to make our connections here. We'll power it up, and that way we can draw our awning out. So I've gone ahead and used heat shrink butt connectors to make our connection, and with a heat gun this will cinch this up. So since this lives outside the RV and it can be exposed to water or any of the elements, this is a good way to just make sure that it's nice and sealed up, and it's going to protect this connection long term. Now, pretty straightforward here. It's just going to be your red wire to red wire and your white to white. We're going to go ahead, get our zip ties taken down, and we'll be able to extend this out. What I'm looking for is some wrinkling, and basically that's going to show us that it's not completely even. So when it rolls back up, it's going to create creases that long term will kind of stay permanent if they are stored that way. So we're going to try to iron that out. Now, while we have this extended out, it's a good time to get our wiring buttoned up. So I'm going to just take some electrical tape, and this is going to be for LED lights. So if you want to later integrate those in, you could tie into this, but running electrical tape over here is going to keep it nice and just added protection on top of those heat shrink butt connectors. And then we can put those plastic channels in to prevent any damage to the wires. Once you get everything centered up and you're happy with that length and it's nice and taut, roll it in a few times back and forth, and that's going to also help center it up. And then you can go ahead, take your self-tapping screw, run that through the extrusion rail into the bead, and that's going to really hold it in. Now you're going to want to keep it about an inch away from the outside edge, and then once you have that in place, all that's left to do is enjoy the new shade. And that was a look and installation of the Solera XL powered awning on a 2021 Keystone Raptor.